Okay, and also, actually, before you start on that activity, let's go back and watch that clip from the Martin Lawrence show. Again, remember you have the transcript for this.
No, Gina, I ain't sleeping in no pink and green room, baby.
Excuse me, those are my sorority colors.
Gina, have you been losing your mind ever since you stopped working? You going crazy. What? It's a muscle man, bro, man. What the hell you doing up in here, bro, man?
I was about to ask y'all the same question. Ain't y'all supposed to be at work?
Look, bro, man. You can't just come rolling up in here. Me and Gina, we're married now.
I've been respecting y'all's marriage. That's why I only come around when y'all ain't at home. Y'all got cable and I got to get my BT on.
Well, right now, bro, man, you got to go because me and my wife, we're having a discussion.
All right, I'll leave.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. There go my favorite BT commercial.
Oh, you like that one too, bro, man? I just ordered that album today. I'm coming up on the side of the mountain.
Who in the hell left the gate open?
Okay, so there's the clip, and this is the transcript that is based off of that video. If you need to see it again, just to listen to how some of these words are pronounced, feel free to rewind. Okay, we'll go over this in a second. Okay, so let's go over the answers that you got to Activity 2. Here we're looking at the phonological rules of African American English vernacular. So let's see the trends that you were able to pick up. So for the blue words, we see that most final consonants are dropped. And here, specifically, we're talking about the G's, right? Sleeping, respecting, doing. So here it would be doing, respecting, sleeping, right? Take out the G's. Very similar to the Southern U.S. Dialect. In the red words, we see that the voice TH actually is replaced with the D, and that is a pattern that we see. It's an actual rule, phonological rule. The green words, the final and middle R's and L's are dropped. So here's an example of, instead of color, she goes colors. And here, instead of here. Okay. Purple words, there's a contraction of going to gone. Right, so that ing is also shortened. The orange words, we see Brahman speaking. He puts primary stress on the first syllable of words that have two syllables in them. Okay, now let's look at the syntactical rules of AAEV. So we see the underlined words. We notice that there's the omission of B, to form the present continuous tense. So, for example, to indicate that something is currently happening. So here we say, instead of you are going crazy, right, where the are, that auxiliary verb be, should be entered, we see it that it's left out, right? We also see here, what the hell are you doing? It should be, what the hell are you doing, right? But that are, that be, that auxiliary verb is omitted in African American English vernacular in the present continuous tense form. Again, doesn't make it incorrect. It's actually a systematic rule that the auxiliary verb be is not used in the same manner as it is in standard American English. Okay, something for you to be aware of as a teacher, to understand that some of the rules that govern African American English and how you can make them explicit for African American students and others who speak other dialects in the classroom. Okay, bolded words. We also see the omission of auxiliary and the use of being to form present perfect progressive. So, I've been respecting y'all's marriage. In standard American English, it would be I have been, right? But that have, auxiliary again, is not used in African American English vernacular. The italicized words. So double negation, just like in Chicano English, double negation is a systematic rule in African American English vernacular. So ain't is a contraction of am not. So instead of I am not sleeping, it would be I ain't sleeping. Also, we see double negative no, ain't and no together. It would be any in Standard American English, but ain't and no would be used in African American English vernacular. Okay, and then the underlined and bolded words, we see the omission of the modal to form the future tense. So usually it would be I will leave, right? I will being that modal verb that goes before leave, that main verb. But in African American English vernacular, that modal is not used. It's not needed because it's pretty clear as to the fact that he hasn't left yet, and thus he will be leaving when he says that. Okay, and then capitalized words. This dialect doesn't treat the third person singular subjects as different from verbs with other subjects. So if you remember, in Standard American English, in present tense verbs, the S goes on the verbs he, she, right? He, she goes, right? He, she eats. Whereas all the other pronouns, I eat, you eat, they eat, we eat, don't get that S. So in African American English vernacular, it's actually a much simpler rule, and it's one that makes a lot more sense, is that they don't add that S to the he, she verb, right? So in Standard American English, it would be there goes my favorite BET commercial, but instead, in African American English vernacular, it would be there go. Just like it would be I go, you go, we go. Okay. So I'd like you to really notice that many of these, well, first of all of these syntactical differences and the phonological differences are rule governed. They're systematic. There's patterns to them, and sometimes, as I hope you've seen, they make a lot more sense than some of the things that we see in Standard American English. Okay. And this is, again, to counter this idea that there's something inherently incorrect, grammatically wrong with any dialect that students come into the classroom speaking other than Standard American English. Okay? Your role as teachers is to be sensitive to the fact that children come in speaking different dialects, and to be very aware that it is your job not to put children down for the way that they speak, but to teach them that in school and in professional settings, there's another dialect that we use, and let me teach you about that dialect. And to be even more explicit about language, as I always push you to be, right? It's explicit about language is the only way that you're going to make it fair for your students and easier for your students to learn the differences. You can show them, this is how it would work in Standard American English. Tell me how it would work in your dialect, right? Give me an example. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the differences. How is it different phonologically, right? How is the sound different? Or how is it different in terms of word order? Or how are the endings different, right? You can talk about the phonology, morphology, syntax, even the semantics with your students in using more layman terms than the technical terms that we talk about in class. Okay. To end the session, I want to show you an excerpt of a student paper. This is a paper that was turned in about a year ago, and I have examples from every semester that I could use. But this is an African American student who turned in a paper, and I'm going to read it to you. And what I'd like you to notice is that this particular student is using a different dialect. She's using African American English vernacular in her writing. And again, there's nothing wrong with that dialect, but as a college student, for me, the fact that she's using this dialect in her academic writing for university is telling me that there's something wrong in our system. The system has failed the student because no one has ever told her the difference in dialects. No one has ever let her know how those structures are in Standard American English versus in African American English vernacular, and she hasn't had the chance, she hasn't been corrected along the way. So in this case, this student, when she writes like this in other classes, I'm sure she would get marked wrong. She would get points, a lot of points in some cases, taken off because of her writing, when in fact it is a systematic failure of the school and of her teachers of not pointing out these differences to her and ensuring that in her writing that she's representing Standard American English rather than her dialect, which the African American English vernacular, which again is valuable and worthy, but should be used in other contexts than in writing assignments in school. So I'm going to read this to you. When I started researching, I read the instruction to the assignment twice to make sure that I had a clear understanding of what need to be used in the data. I begin gathering the data by using the websites that given by the professor to use to complete this assignment. So again, do you notice given? That auxiliary is missing in the past tense. It should be were given, right? Auxiliary is missing. Do you notice a trend from the rules that we just discussed? Okay. My school identify, assess, register, and place new ELLs in classes by how many students are in a classroom and the teacher. Notice, my school identify. It's supposed to be identifies because school falls into that category of he, she, it, getting an S. Remember, that's a rule that we just covered in that activity, that in African American English vernacular, it doesn't get the S. But no one has told the student about the difference. Many teachers are qualified to work with ELL students. This doesn't cause a big problem in the school. The data from my school compare to the district have some differences in different areas. So here we're seeing some conjugation, right, issues. When looking at the FCAT writing scores, the district was 66% and the school was 50%. I was able to see that the school need to make gain next year and that they was capable of reaching the score since there were 16% differences. So you see they was is also another rule from African American English vernacular. So the issue here, and I really want to drive this home to you, it's not that the student is a bad student. It's not that the student is uneducated or unable to do well in school. This writing says nothing about the capability of the student. This writing tells you the systematic failure of the educational system, right, out there. It shows you that her teachers were never explicit about language with her. They did not pinpoint the differences between African American English vernacular and Standard American English. Okay, so I really encourage you, as teachers of English language learners and as teachers of children who are going to come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, to be explicit within language for your students. Help them see the differences. Don't make them feel like their dialects are bad in any way or incorrect in any way, but different, right? Talk about the linguistics behind it. It's very important. Okay, and lastly, I would like you to, I'm going to give you your discussion board prompt right now. And this week I'd like you to respond to the discussion board and answer these questions. Okay? Educational discrimination exists for many culturally or linguistically diverse students due to stereotypes about non-standard US English and other English dialects. Answer the following questions. How are the power structures in society and attitudes about dialects related? How do these power structures trickle down into schools? How can teachers empower students who speak a different variety of English? So what I'd like you to do is answer these three questions in a paragraph form. You can write as much as you would like. I would really like to see in your answer information from this PowerPoint. You can use examples, and I really recommend that you use examples from the video that you watched before this PowerPoint, and infuse all of the knowledge that we've talked about in this session into your response. Okay? I really look forward to reading those. Again, let me go through the objectives of this session. So we looked at the social reasons for prejudice against different dialects. We determined the differences between a language, a dialect, a pidgin, a Creole, and an accent. we used our phonological, grammatical, and semantic knowledge to see the differences between dialects. You also used your linguistic terminology to apply that. I went through the historical development of Ebonics for you, and we also identified different phonological and syntactical rules of African American English vernacular as compared to standard American English. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope it was really sort of illuminating for you, and I will see you next time.